Hello, I'm Bathsheba Demuth, and I'm the author of The Floating Coast, which is a history of the Russian and American sides of the Bering Strait, which is where Alaska and Siberia almost meet. But the origins of this book actually go back long before I ever imagined being a historian. When I was 18, I moved to an indigenous Gwich'in village in the Canadian Arctic, about 80 miles north of the Arctic Circle. And I planned on staying there for like 3 or 4 months. And I ended up staying there for several years. And my primary job was training sled dogs, and I really just sort of couldn't get enough of it. But to do that job and to not die, my host family had to teach me how to pay attention to the non-human world, how to imagine my actions from the perspective of the animals and the landscapes that I lived with. So much of my sort of personal history in the place was defined by caribou or moose or the weather or the actions of my sled dogs. And this really changed the way that I, as a girl from Iowa, thought about things. Living in such a challenging environment left me thinking about two kind of interlocking questions ever since, which is how do our ideas change nature, and how does nature change the way that we think about the world? And I wrote The Floating Coast really to examine these two ideas. And it takes place in the Bering Strait region because over the last 200 years, this place has been home to so many different ideas. There are those held by the indigenous peoples of the Bering Strait, the Inupiat, the Yupik, and the Chukchi, and then there's capitalism and communism that come in the 20th century. And my hope with this book is that it lends readers a way of seeing the world and the past, kind of doing so through the perspective of whales and caribou and foxes, but also through the perspectives of many different kinds of people, as sort of a historical guide to ways that we can imagine our relationship with environments in the present, from changing climates to melting ice.